Do you remember these? Now it looks like this. Come with me and I'll show you my Quilt-As-You-Go process. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Well, as I said in my intro, do you remember all of these fun blocks? Yes, these are the mandalas that we quilted over the past year, and now it's time to turn them into a quilt. Now, I know I need to use a Quilt-As-You-Go process, and honestly, I haven't tried that for many, many years. Back in the day that I did it, you sewed the fronts together, and then you meticulously hand sewed the backs together. That ain't happening. Okay, I'm not going to spend that much time hand sewing. So I started thinking about ways that I could put these blocks together and just use a machine and get it done and make it look great. As you can see, I have done one side here and I'm going to get ready to do the other side, and I want you to join me. Let's go and work through my process for Quilt-As-You-Go. Let me show you the process that I'm doing. They were originally cut at 15 inches. I am now going to trim them down to 14.5 inches, working by setting my 7.25 inch mark right there. 17.25, and in most cases I can find a line that I can come out to. You can kind of see the lines that are in here. Let's see, do I have 14.5 to do this? I've got plenty down here. I'm a little short up there, so this one is going to be slightly off center, but that's okay. I'm just not going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to make it happen. So I want it to be 14 inches for our 14.5 inches all the way around. It looks like I've got it. So let's cut here and up there. Did I get the back on it? Yep, I did. Good deal. Okay, let's turn it and do 14.5 on this side. Okay, got that. Trim and trim. Okay, there's one that is cut the correct size, 14.5. Okay, now that I have it to be 14.5 inches, I want to lift the batting and the top up, and I want to turn the backing fabric under, so that when I'm cutting, making this next cut, I'm only cutting through the top and through the batting. And I'm going to take 1/4 inch off along here. So let's measure it up, see where that's going to be. That's 14.5. Yes, I am using the measurements on the other side just to help me get a good 1/4 inch here. So there, I've got it. So I'm going to come along here and take 1/4 inch off, turn it. Let's do the same thing. We're going to flip the backing back like that. So we're just going through the top . And yes, I could probably eyeball this 1/4 inch, but I'd rather mark it just to make sure I've got it. Now, for this particular one, I'm only going to do 3 sides because it's going to be an edge. This is going to be one of my outside edges here. So I only want to do the inside edges at this point. And if you can see on each one of them, the backing fabric is hanging over 1/4 inch. All right, now we have 2 blocks that have edges on them on 3 sides, here and here. What we're going to do is we're going to turn these over like this. We're going to put one on top of the other like this, and we are going to sew this edge right here on the back. We're just going to sew the backing fabric. We're going to sew down like this, being sure that we have not caught any of that backing fabric in there. And you see that there is a seam that has been sewn right here just from those fabrics. Now on my ironing surface, I'm going to lay it out like this. I'm going to take my iron and I'm just going to iron that seam to one side or the other. I'm not worried about which one. And yes, I made a little mess there, didn't I? Oops, don't like that. All right, now let's look at it. Let's pull back these top fabrics and let's look and see. We have our two batting fabrics are lined up beautifully. So what I'm going to do next is just take a piece of batting seam tape. I'll leave information in the show notes about where you can purchase that. And I'm just going to cut a length that is about the approximate length of the block that I've just done. I'm not going to worry if it's a little bit short. And I'm going to come in here and I have those lined up well. Let me just move that out of the way with a pin so I don't have to worry about it. Okay. So I have those lined up well right there. I'm going to lay my batting seam tape on top of here. That's going to help hold it together. And I'm going to iron it in place. You can see I'm being a little more careful trying not to wrinkle the top fabrics here as much. Okay. Pull this back over. And you can see that my top fabrics line up beautifully right there. When I have everything put together, my plan is to take a strip similar to this, probably maybe a little bit wider than this, and probably this fabric. I may change my mind, but I'm going to then just applique along each edge, stitch this down that's going to cover that seam. So what we have here is we have the back seam is sewn, the front batting is butted up together and is fused in place, and these top seams are just going to be right here. All right, I want to cut a strip that will give me a way to fold this over to have this edge be straight. Now I could just cut it the size that I need plus ½ inch and then carefully fold over ¼ inch all the way along here. Personally, I find that hard to do. I don't think I get a very neat edge over here because my ¼ inch varies and I end up having a wave. So what I did is I cut my strips twice the width that I want. So I want my finished strip to be 1½ inches. So I cut this piece 3 inches. And let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just come over and fold it. I'm not too worried about where it is. I'm just going to iron all the way down. And I know you're saying, but Frances, you're not keeping that even. No, I'm not too worried about it, and I'll show you why. Now for the other side, I am going to, instead of worrying about the width that I need to fold this over, I'm just going to fold it over until it meets that other side right there. So it doesn't matter if this one is really wide and this one's a little narrow. It doesn't really matter. As long as I'm butting up those two pieces of fabric when I am ironing these, I'm going to have the strip be the exact size that I want it to be. So let's finish ironing this and I'll show you how it looks. So now I have my 1½ inch strip with finished edges all ready to go. So now all I'm going to do is take this strip that I've made and lay it along here. And honestly, I'm going to eyeball it all the way along here and just pin it in place as I go. And once I get it in place, I'll have a good look at it and make sure that it's still straight. But I'm not doing a whole lot of measuring or anything. I'm just doing some eyeball work to put that in place. All right, I'm set up at my sewing machine, ready to stitch this strip down. Now, I have a Juki, and Juki has a thing called a compensating foot, which has a lowered edge on this side right here, meaning that if I butt this up against that edge right there, I get a 1/8 of an inch seam going right along that fold. That's what I'm aiming for. Now, if you don't have a compensating foot or another foot like this, I would encourage you to just maybe use your walking foot. Walking foot works really well when you have lots of layers of fabric, in particular when there's batting involved. Just go slow, take your time, and keep that stitching 1/8 of an inch away from that fold. Here we go. One thing that I am doing here as I stitch, and I probably could have put a few more pins in here to be honest with you, but what I'm doing as I stitch is I'm just making sure that there's not any folds, that there isn't, that this isn't up like that. I'm pushing it in to make sure that it's nice and flat against that edge that I'm sewing. Let's keep going. Now that I've reached the end, I've turned it around and I'm going to come down the other side. And as I said, a few more pins would have been helpful. And you know, as I'm doing this, I'm worrying about this in here, that this doesn't look good. And it finally dawned on me there's going to be another piece of fabric going that way. So I really don't have to worry about it as much as I am. So now both of the vertical sashes are on. Let's get those 4 horizontal ones done, and we'll call this one finished. Well, it isn't perfect, but it's finished. And after all, it's not a family heirloom. It is simply a sample that I'm going to use when I'm teaching the Mandala Quilt workshop that I'm working on. So I'm very pleased that it's done. I vaguely considered adding some more quilting in here and even thought about adding some borders to it, but decided nope, it was time for it to be finished. And I'm so glad that I can say categorically the Mandala Quilt Project is over. It was fun. I had a great time learning all the different things that I learned, but it's very exciting to see the quilt finished and the project done. So the next question is, what am I working on next? Well, I'm not exactly sure, but come back next Friday and I'll have something else to show you. Thanks so much for joining me, guys, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.